The migraine cases, of which I've handled many and had some a lot with Unum, and I've had appeals where I've won and they've been reversed, some with claimants earning upwards of $40,000 a month, is that these headache claims are all subjective. Migraines, headaches. There's no objective per se evidence to say that someone has a headache. So, how do you go about proving that someone is indeed experiencing these headaches?
Well, I think if one of the things that we did to address it, acknowledging that that's the case often with
Right.
conditions like this, particularly the migraines.
Hi, I'm attorney Greg Dell here with attorney Cesar Gavidia, and today we're going to talk about one of Cesar's resolved cases against Unum. And Cesar, this was a great victory that you had for this claimant. Unum cases they're the largest disability insurer in the world, at least on the group side. And they also are one of the highest deniers of long-term disability benefits and short-term disability benefits. So they've officially earned that distinction, coming from me personally and only in my opinion, should they think otherwise. But we see a lot of them. Hundreds, if not thousands a year, and thousands obviously over a career. But in these videos, we like to talk about why did Unum deny this particular claim? What did we do to get it reversed? And through that conversation, provide tips for people who are either looking to protect their benefits or have been denied and are looking for further advice in terms of what they can do to get their benefits reversed and reinstated. So tell us the background of this particular case.
So yeah, everything you said, Greg, about Unum was spot on. One of the other things, though, I want to mention with them is that appeals with Unum are particularly challenging to overturn decisions. I don't know what it is sometimes with them. I think they feel so confident that their decision was right that you really got to ensure that your appeal is comprehensive and that you've really eliminated all doubt that could possibly exist so that you can get, the decision overturned, right? So getting into my case, the client was a young woman who in 2021, like many of us, had gone and sought the vaccine, the Moderna vaccine. And she'd received the first injection, and shortly following the second injection, she started developing some very serious and severe migraine symptoms. Well, she'd had migraine symptoms in the past. It was kind of historically something that she would deal with, like maybe once a year or twice a year, these migraines. But about 30 days or so after she received the vaccine, the booster, she started having these severe symptoms almost daily. And when I say these symptoms, I'm talking about severe migraines with aura, photophobia, visual loss, to the point where she had to go directly into the emergency room because they thought she was having a stroke, okay, which could be a side effect from the infection, and it could be just one of those circumstances, but she hadn't had a stroke. But she was having these symptoms. She was a high-level recruiter for a multinational law firm. This firm, just to put it into context, employed thousands of lawyers all over the globe. They specialized in IP, high-level corporate litigation, financial litigation. I mean, really, really high-level, complex legal, legal issues and cases. And she was in charge and responsible for recruiting partners and associates and lawyers to their flagship offices, essentially, New York and Boston. Starts having these issues and on a daily basis, and was just basically incapacitated, couldn't fulfill her job duties anymore. So she had to then, ultimately inform her employer and go on disability and stop working.
Did Unum ever pay her at all?
She submitted a claim to Unum, and they did. They did pay her. She was treating at one of the premier, facilities and in health and institutions, a university institution. So, I mean, in terms of documentation and real objective findings and evidence in terms of these problems, that was there. So they did approve it. They paid the claim for almost about 18 months.
Okay.
And then came the review. Well, what's happening around 18 months?
The change of definition from.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they're now looking at, well, if we can eliminate or potentially challenge this without it even crossing into that ENEOC, period, then we don't even have to get into that question.
So let me clarify for people who don't know. Unum usually has a policy that says after 24 months of paying disability, your definition of disability will change from the inability to perform the duties of your own occupation, which means the occupation you're doing at the time you became disabled, and it will switch to the inability to do any gainful occupation, which could mean any gainful occupation, or gainful could be defined to say a job that pays you 60% of what you used to earn. I'm not sure in your case if it had an income component to it or not, but it would be any other type of job.
Right. But it didn't even get to that question because at that point, at 18 months, she's still in the ONOC.
Right.
Right. So they compile her records. They have them reviewed by their medical, peer review doctors. And of course, the peer review doctors say, hey, well, over 18 months with the medications she's been prescribed and the Botox treatments she's been getting, it appears like she's had improvement. So we think she can go back to work. And then they do a vocational review. And the vocational review is just this kind of basically superficial, can she do sedentary work?
Right. Can she sit for 6 hours a day out of 8?
Yeah. Can she push and pull?
Which, with her difficulties and with her migraine, she could sit in a chair for 6 hours a day, but that's not what the job involved.
Right, and then they did, to their credit, look at the mental and cognitive, but it was just, it was such a superficial, cursory review, vocational review, never getting into the real, details of her occupation as a high-level recruiter and what was required of it.
So it was a typical superficial denial by Unum.
Yeah.
What did you do in order to get the benefits reversed?
Well, before that, Unum had actually, after they received their opinions from their doctors, went out to her doctors and said, hey, do you agree with this? And a few of them did. It was funny because in the denial letter, they didn't identify the right doctors that did. But we recognized that and we identified that, so it was kind of sloppy, but they did. I mean, these are doctors that they have a lot of they were seeing a lot of patients. They really don't have a lot of time. They're looking at a medical file. They're not even answering for themselves what does this person do for a living?
Mm-hmm.
So they just responded. So we had to address that. That was a real, because that could be a nail in the coffin for a disability claim. So when we addressed the appeal, when she came to us and she hired us, that was one of the things we had to ensure we were addressing. She was religious about her care and her treatment, and she continued going to these doctors. And we had to really establish a line of communication with these doctors so that they understood, well, what is it that was required of her occupation? What are the ongoing symptoms she's having? She's having a lot of trouble working on computers, being able to attend meetings, these are things that are still occurring to her almost on a daily basis. So we had to attack the vocational, we had to attack the medical, we had to address all these things, get all this right. And once we did that, fortunately, Unum overturned the decision.
And what types of doctors did you rely upon to support and provide additional evidence?
Well, we had a neurologist. So as you know, neurology is a specialty of medicine. And we had neuro-ophthalmology, a specialty within a specialty, because of her vision issues. We had her internists. So those were the primary specialists that we were relying upon here. I mean, these are real top-notch doctors that we were relying on, and specialty within specialty.
The migraine cases, of which I've handled many and had some a lot with Unum, and I've had appeals where I've won and they've been reversed, some with claimants earning upwards of $40,000 a month, is that these headache claims are all subjective. Migraines, headaches. There's no objective per se evidence to say that someone has a headache. So, you know, how do you go about proving that someone is indeed experiencing these headaches?
Well, I think if one of the things that we did to address it, acknowledging that that's the case often with
Right.
conditions like this, particularly the migraines. I mean, we know the migraines occur. We know they exist. We know that they can occur with aura. They can occur with really severe visual loss and visual disturbances. We know. I mean, this is medically and scientifically a fact. Her husband and her wrote incredible and compelling personal statements that we included with the appeal, you know, describing, you know, what her day-to-day is like, providing a migraine log, a headache log, showing how frequently these headaches were occurring, what was triggering them, what particularly was the intensity of them, you know, what made them worse. When did they seem to, you know, not be as intense, and what would help, you know, resolve them, you know, which in part were the Botox injections
Right.
and things, but those are things that she had to go in frequently for. It's a therapy, essentially.
Right, of course.
So, you know, you have to establish the credibility of the patient's complaints, you know, and that helps tremendously in cases where, you know, you have the challenge of a condition that you can't establish or show a particular, you know, intensity of the limitations, the frequency of limitation, or the existence of these limitations because of the subjective nature.
Well, one thing that I know helped your client in this particular case was they didn't have any inappropriate video surveillance of her doing any activities that were inconsistent with what she said she couldn't do. She didn't have any social media out there of her doing activities that she said she couldn't do. And so Unum was like, look, we don't have any other evidence to rebut what she's telling us.
They didn't have anything that was inconsistent like what you just described,
Right.
but they did do an extensive background investigation. And it was interesting because the file actually, there's pages of it that were blacked out, which from the private investigators. And what I believe that essentially was the frames, the still shots of the surveillance that they did. And as you know, the reason they do that is so that you don't, and I thought it's not really appropriate in ERISA cases because you're entitled to the entire administrative file and record, so you
Right.
should be entitled to that. On the individual side, on the private claims, you know that they often try to withhold that sort of surveillance from us until they get the client's,
Right.
person's deposition,
Right.
you know.
Well, I think you did a great job with this. The other thing I would say for people who have migraine claims as a tip is to keep what's called a headache or a migraine log. And that's a daily documentation of when you're having migraines. And migraines, you know, to have migraine disorder, there's multiple diagnoses for this. It doesn't have to be every day. It has to be X number of days per month. And you could have good days and bad days. I find with most of my clients, when they become episodic, they can be locked down for maybe it's an afternoon, maybe it's 3 days that they don't do anything. And so by keeping that headache log, it really becomes almost like objective evidence it is objective evidence of subjective complaints. But it's really nice to maintain that and have it and bring it to the doctor as well and have the doctor say, look, I've reviewed this headache log. And also then it's evidence that we can use in an appeal down the road to say, look, here's evidence of what was going on, to show and put reality that how could you have headaches 2 times a week or whatever and then be a reliable employee when you don't even know? They're unpredictable. So how are you going to schedule appointments? How are you going to commit to sales calls? How are you going to commit to anything. They'd be like, sorry, I have a migraine today. Sorry, even if you're, I don't know, a receptionist or
Sure.
whatever you're doing, or a cleaner. You can't be relied upon as an employee. And that's the problem with the people who have the migraines, is you're just not employable, because when these things happen, you can't work. You're totally incapacitated.
And that's why, you know, establishing the frequency, the intensity, and all of these details, because oftentimes, and provide them, like, as you said, to your providers, to your doctors, bringing
Yes.
that with you to your appointments so that it's incorporated as part of your medical file is really important.
Well, congratulations on winning this on behalf of the client. I know the client, you know, you continue to represent her and review the claimant statements and work with her doctors and review the attending physician statements and do whatever you can to keep her from being denied again, because with Unum, we've had people who they don't pay you initially, or they pay you for a little bit, or we've had claimants who have been paid for 18 years and then they get denied. So you can never let your guard down. You have to always be proactive in managing your claim, and that's what we do in representing the claimants.
And I'll say this, I was really honored to represent her because she was a high-level legal recruiter for a multinational firm, and she selected us to represent her. And I thought that was I felt really honored by that.
That was great, because she clearly had been around lawyers for a while, and she saw something in you that she was impressed by, and the experience of the firm and all the resources that you had to help you. So great job. If you're someone out there who has a Unum short-term or long-term disability claim, feel free to reach out to Caesar or myself. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.